Hello, Joy Olson of Blockbuster Fundraising. Say, which kind of household is most likely to leave a bequest to charity? Do you know the answer to that? Well, Tom Ahern does, because he has put together the 20 questions, the donor communications quiz, and gave this to all of his expert friends, and they came up with answers to these 20 questions. And not only do they have answers to these 20 questions, but they have the reasons why. So let's get started, because today we're down to the final 4 questions. And of course, we're starting with number 16. Which kind of household is most likely to leave a bequest to charity? The answer is a middle-class household. And as a development director, I totally agree with this. And oftentimes it's just incredibly surprising who does leave you a bequest. I have found as a development director that often it's the $50 a month, the $40 a month donor that's just there 12 months a year, never more, never less, kind of quietly in the background, and all of a sudden you get this beautiful bequest. It can be very surprising, but in my instance, it has been middle-class households. So let's look at the notes and assumptions that Tom Ahern's expert put together for us. And they say that this vital research, and it comes from the Iceberg Philanthropy, and it's a part of a profile of, quote, Jacqueline, quote, the average North American donor. And Jacqueline, the average American donor, is discussed in great detail and depth by this remarkable, yet Tom Ahern says it's a very unappreciated book, okay? And he says that Jacqueline is typical of those donors who send your organization $35 checks through the mail. She's the classic ordinary donor. Your major gift officer pays no attention to donors like Jacqueline, nor does your planned giving officer. So the fact that Jacqueline remains invisible to most nonprofit organizations, even though she might well have been giving to you consistently for 10 to 20 years, means, as the Iceberg Philanthropy study hammers home, that you're probably ignoring most of your best prospects. Marketing specialist Richard Radcliffe says that the best basic approach is to mail your bequest prospects a brief letter once a year, reminding them that they can make a spectacular difference by adding a gift in their will. Big takeaway right there. Better get right into that database and come up with a brief letter now. Perfect summer project. All right, question 17. It says he speaks to hundreds of fundraisers a year, and this is what they have found about unlocking extraordinary gifts from ordinary donors. Now, this is the study that Iceberg Philanthropy has put together, all right? It would be a good study. This was done in 2007 to get your hands on. All right, so Tom Ahern says, I often ask how many organizations in this room expect to be out of business in 25 years. No hands go up. Then I ask, how many of you have an aggressive bequest marketing program? Again, no hands go up. Those 2 data points are incompatible. If you're serious about your nonprofit's organization's sustainability, a bequest marketing program is essential. Tom Ahern says, just ask Harvard University, which now covers something like 43% of its annual operating costs from endowment income alone, and much of that originating as bequests. And he says that it's cheap and easy to market bequests. It requires one extra letter a year at a minimum. Just one extra letter a year. And best of all, you don't have to acquire any new donors. Your best bequest prospects are already in your database. They are those who've given loyally for years, and they make larger than average annual gifts. Now here's something really interesting that they address, and I'll address this briefly today, but when you read Tom Ahern's 20 questions, they feel that planned giving has really killed a lot of bequests. And he says that U.S. fundraising shops, though typically categorize charitable bequests as planned gifts, he says, in my opinion, in my view, that is a serious mistake. It lumps humble bequests, which mostly originate from middle-class households, in with a bunch of sophisticated financial products that only the wealthy and their advisors care about or understand. So if you have a planned giving officer, they are technically in an expert field that includes lawyers that are qualified to explain the tax and incomes advantages of all these different products. Who should market bequests if not the planned giving department? Hey, you, the development officer, the annual fund people, because you're in regular touch with the middle of the giving pyramid. Tom Ahern calls this middle the stratum from whence most bequests emerge. So, there you've got it. Go after legacy giving, one extra letter a year. All right, moving on to the very next question. And remember, if you download this, and I hope you do, this entire 20 questions report, you get a lot more examples and ideas too that further expound on each and every question and answer. We educate our donors about the work we do, they'll give us more. Do you think that's true or false? The answer is it's very false. And here's the backup to that answer. When charities try to educate donors, the approach generally is, we, the authorities, teach. You, the unaware, learn. Oh no. Which ends up being, as you might imagine, either a big bore or a bit offensive. I'd say a bit offensive. The assumption goes something like this. New donors come in pretty uninformed about our important work. If we can teach them more about it, they'll come to admire it, understand it, and then contribute more. Well, that assumption probably somewhere to somebody makes sense. But Tom Ahern says it's a strategy for starvation. He says the plain truth is, if your nonprofit organization could cure cancer with a magic wand, your donors would be delighted. The details of the science simply wouldn't matter. Donors care about fixing a problem. They want to fix a problem. They don't much care how you do it. They don't need to know the name of the program. They don't need to know how the program works. They don't need to know all the data associated with the program. All they really need to know is that you have a program and that you are going to make this happen. That their impact is the only thing that really counts. People aren't giving to you, they're giving through you to make something happen. All right? So don't educate donors about your work. Take them on a journey. Ditch the data. Ditch the details. Tell stories instead. And when you take your donors on this beautiful journey, donors tend to remain for a longer time. Okay? Research backs that up. All right, let's move on. Who's the real hero in fundraising communications? Which means your appeals, your newsletters, and your website. And you know this. The answer is your donor. So just remember this about your donor. They pay attention to what interests them. And what interests them most of the time is them. Ask anyone. Most charities that Tom Ahern encounters says that they get this notion exactly backwards. They assume that it's critically important to explain how great their programs are as a precursor to anyone giving to them. Well, he says it's not a wrong assumption exactly. And he says, as a donor, you do need to be trusted. They need to trust you. But here is the deal. Once donors are in a relationship with your charity, their focus shifts from what the charity does for its beneficiaries to how the relationship makes them feel. Did you get that? Huge amount of research backs them up. So you want to remember this. Making your donors feel good about their impact is terribly important. It's strategically important. And who should approve donor communications at your nonprofit? Meaning your appeals, your newsletters, your website. The answer, the experts say, and I really agree with this, is the Director of Development, the Chief Fundraiser. The experts say that in a responsibly managed nonprofit, only one person exercises final approval over fundraising and donor communications, and that is the Director of Development. It's her neck on the line after all. It's her responsibility to raise the money. And she will be judged, or he will be judged, on their ability to do so. Therefore, every tool that they need to complete that assignment, whether it's a direct mail piece, whether it's the newsletter, whether it's the fundraising page on your website, whether it's making sure that all the links work on the website, it must be under her exclusive control. And Tom Ahern says, he repeats that, exclusive control, without the second guessing of untrained development board or boss. And yet the number one complaint that he hears from all the fundraisers that he's trying to train is that my boss won't let me do it that way. And then he gives some real life examples. For instance, my boss insists on writing all the appeals himself, and he's boring. Okay, my boss told me to switch to emailed newsletters exclusively because nobody reads print anymore. Or it goes on and on. My boss heard me out, then he told me, and I quote, "Sorry, but that's not how we do things here." At least he said he was sorry. And the board chair insisted I take out the indents. He thinks they're very unbusinesslike. I have a little story to tell about a boss of mine, and I loved him, and everybody loved him, and he was extremely successful. But he came to us through the newspaper world, and I thought, this is going to be so great. I have somebody that really understands editing, and I just was so excited about his help. And I thought, he understands all kinds of catchy headlines. And so I asked him to edit after he came on board, my first, I think it was my January a letter to everyone, thanking them. And when he returned the letter to me, I almost fainted. He'd edited out everything. And what we laughed about it later all the time. But his view of communications was totally professional. And my view of donor communications was totally warm and fuzzy and just like a big hug, which seemed very unprofessional to him. So make sure that you try to get control of what goes out in your fundraising department. And I hope you can do that. It'll make a huge difference, and I'm sure that you can, because you don't want to be demoralized or disheartened or frustrated or disillusioned by somebody second guessing everything that you're trying to do, because your job is to know and try to get a body of knowledge and responsible fundraising out to your donors that just makes them feel wonderful about supporting you, wonderful about making a difference in the world. All right, hey, Joy Olson here of Blockbuster Fundraising. So enjoyed reading the 20 questions, and now it's just been a real, it's been a joy to share them with you, and I hope you download some of this information, the 20 questions link for sure, some books and studies that we've referred to. They're really worth their weight in gold, and I think they help give you a path to fundraising greatness. So take your fundraising from successful to significant with these tips from the experts in the field, backed up by so much testing and research. Okay? All right. Joy Olson, Blockbuster Fundraising, joyolsongroup.com. We have hundreds of free fundraising video tips on our YouTube channel, and also check out our summer learning series on our YouTube channel. It was wonderful to see you again here today. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.